Talked to Alex Kennedy from BasketballInsiders.com, where, yesterday Josh Harris and Bryan Colangelo spoke to the Philly media for the first time, and Josh Harris trying to play it off as if, this was, just happened to be. We had a Hall of Fame father. He took himself out of the process, and he didn't give me any insight on this. We just happened to pick his son. Are you buying that, Alex?
Not necessarily. I definitely think that Jerry Colangelo's presence affected things here. There's no question that Bryan Colangelo has experience, and he's someone that has come up for other jobs as well. So it's not like this is completely out of left field, and Bryan Colangelo has no experience or something like that. Bryan has done a decent job as a GM in the past. He's made some questionable moves, but I do think Jerry played a role in this. Initially, whenever Jerry was brought in, people wondered about Sam Hinkie's future. We really saw around that time that Sam kind of lost control and wasn't really able to call the shot. And I was kind of surprised that the Sixers did that, just because whenever they initially went with Sam, they chose him over some other more traditional candidates. And it seemed like the plan was they were going to give him 5 years to kind of go down this path and collect assets and collect draft picks. I think to abandon it now doesn't make much sense. I think if you do something like this, you want to go all the way in and, go for the full 5 years and let him, use the assets that he's kind of stockpiled. So it was kind of strange. But to answer your question, I do think Jerry played a role in it. They also looked at Danny Ferry, who I think is a very good executive, but obviously, his name's kind of been dragged through the mud just because of everything that happened in Atlanta with the racial comments and things like that. And obviously that's going to impact him no matter where he goes in his future. But, at the end of the day, Bryan is someone that seems like he could do a good job there. But there's no question. I think they're going to try to speed up the rebuild and start pursuing some trades and free agency moves that we wouldn't have seen from a Sam Hinkie-led team.
Yeah, Alex, I mean, a lot of people believe that, if Hinkie was in charge and he was the guy, the people who liked Hinkie and are sad to see him go would say, well, he was ready to take that jump towards whatever anybody, Bryan Colangelo said yesterday. Now it's time to take that next phase. Do you think that Sam did not see now is the time to take that jump?
Well, I think their idea of taking a jump is very different. I think for Sam, his idea of taking a jump is, look, we have multiple draft picks essentially in this year's draft, multiple first-round picks. Next year, we may have Dario Saric and, Joel Embiid. So you have, two guys that are very talented players, two guys that have been talked about as potential stars. They could be available. So I think for Sam, his idea was, next year, let's roll out a competitive team. It's still going to be a young team because you're going to have, the guys that they draft this year. You're still going to have Noel and Okafor, Embiid and Saric. You're going to have those guys on the floor, and they're going to be more competitive. And I think that's a big step forward. But I think Colangelo, Bryan, and Jerry, it seems like their idea of a step forward is trying to go pay some free agents, getting some veterans in there. From the moment that Jerry Colangelo got the job, he was determined to bring in experienced people, whether that's, players in terms of Elton Brand and Ish Smith and some guys like that have more experience, or coaches. I mean, he brought Mike D'Antoni in, who obviously has a long track record as a head coach, whereas Brett Brown was a first-time head coach, NBA head coach when he got his job. So I think they just had different ideas of taking that leap. Sam wanted to continue down his path, but certainly show progress. He wanted next year to be the year that the team was playing better and winning more games while still holding on to that, trust the process idea. Whereas I think Jerry and Bryan, their idea is, let's move forward. Let's use some of this cap space. Let's trade some of these assets and make that leap. And ironically, if they do that, I think, that's where we see the Sixers possibly compete for, the 9th, 10th, 11th seed in the Eastern Conference. And what's strange about that and what's ironic about that is this whole plan under Sam Hinkie was to avoid that. That's why they traded away Drew Holiday. That's why they stockpiled these assets. The idea was, let's not be a middle-of-the-pack team anymore. Let's try to tank for a few years, get a star or two, and then, be near the top of the Eastern Conference standings, but instead now it seems like they're abandoning that and they're trying to just get back into the playoffs or get back into the playoff, hunt for the playoffs. And that's somewhat strange. I think they may have gave up on it too quickly.
Yeah, Alex Kennedy's with us from Basketball Insiders. So was Hinkie's plan, process, whatever it's been called or whatever you want to view it as, was his 3 years essentially a success for what he set out to do? Did he succeed in what he wanted to do?
Well, I think you can make the case that he did succeed, but I think you can also make the case that he failed. It kind of depends how you view it. I think we have to see how these players develop before we can really judge how Sam did. I think certainly he could have done a better job of drafting some players and developing those players. Bringing in veterans and things like that would have helped those guys develop and maybe maximize their potential. But look, I think he was kind of put in a tough position. Embiid was the right pick, I feel like, even though he's had injuries and hasn't been able to play yet. Okafor was the right pick. I like the Noel pick. I like the moves he's made. Michael Carter-Williams, the trade, it really worked out for them because Carter-Williams really has struggled since being traded. So you look back at the moves that he made, and he did a pretty good job. And I think what he was trying to do was, set this team up for the future. And so it's hard to judge if it was a success or not. But certainly, I think he changed the way people look at the NBA because they're going to have to make some kind of changes to stop teams from doing this in the future. The NBA wasn't happy about it. But look, all along I've said that the plan makes a lot of sense. And if you do this long enough, you're bound to get a star player or two eventually. So I think that Sam proved, that this can be done and fans can get behind it. That was kind of the big question. Could fans support this? I think that was a success because he really was careful about how he described it and made it very clear to fans what he was doing and why it made sense. But I think really the failure here is that he didn't get the chance to carry it out long enough, and the fact that they missed on some draft picks. If the ping pong balls had went a different way, or if some of these players were healthier, we could be talking about a team that has Andrew Wiggins or Jabari Parker, or go down the list of guys that could be available or could be on the Sixers right now. Had things gone a little bit differently, he could still be having the job right now. We could be talking about a very different roster. So it's hard to say success or failure, but I think 4 or 5 years from now, we'll be able to look back and say either, man, that was a really bad tenure, or man, Sam Hinkie really set the Sixers team up for success, and the core that he put together is a big part of why they're now a very good team.
Alex, what do you make of Jerry Colangelo removing himself from this situation?
Well, I was surprised because when they brought him in, the big thing that they were saying was that they wanted someone that had his experience and someone that was respected the way he is. They felt like in recent years, some of the relationships between the front office and agents and players had kind of been, strained a bit just because, obviously the Sixers were playing a lot of guys that, people felt like should be in the D-League or not be in the NBA. They weren't spending a lot of money. Guys were being traded like Michael Carter-Williams, very early in their career. So I think agents had, some agents had a problem with the Sixers. Some agents, liked the fact that their guys were going to go get a ton of playing time in Philly. It just kind of varied. But certainly veterans didn't want to go there, and some agents were kind of frustrated. And other executives were frustrated, too, with how things were going. So Colangelo is someone that's extremely respected, and they wanted him to come in to kind of repair that. So I do think that, he had conversations with agents and executives to repair some of those relationships. And now I think he feels confident that Bryan can go forward and be able to continue to do that. And he's still going to be there in an advisory role. So if he has to make a few calls and try to continue to repair relationships, that could happen. I was somewhat surprised, but I do think he's still, someone that's going to be involved moving forward. And I think really the transition was, the idea of the transition was to move on from Hinkie and bring in a new general manager. And that's what they did with Bryan. No matter how bad it looks, bringing in his son, he did accomplish what he wanted to.
Have you ever seen a situation where a general manager left a team with 47 wins in 3 years be talked about and covered so fiercely?
No, it's really interesting. I was thinking about this last night as I was, looking at a bunch of different articles about Sam Hinkie and the whole situation. There's so much going on in the NBA right now. You have the Warriors potentially becoming, the greatest regular season team of all time. You have Kobe Bryant nearing the end of his career. So many storylines in the NBA right now, and this is dominating it. But I think, the reason that it's really resonated with fans is that Hinkie's tenure is unlike really any other we've seen from a GM. His plan was very unique, and so many fans were on board with it. And I think it was very polarizing. So now, the people that didn't like Hinkie or didn't like his plan are coming out and celebrating and saying, "Oh, I told you so. It was never going to work. He, failed." Whereas, you see a lot of people on Twitter and Sixers fans even reacting, and, they're upset. They feel like the franchise looks like a joke right now because they gave up on Hinkie too early, that there was clear nepotism going from Jerry Colangelo to Bryan Colangelo. The whole situation is kind of crazy, and I understand why it's getting coverage, just because the father-son aspect, the fact that Hinkie's so polarizing. It is interesting, especially with so much going on in the NBA right now, but I think that kind of shows you how unique his tenure was.
So many times, Alex Kennedy's with us, Basketball Insiders, people will say, if you didn't like Bryan Colangelo, and I don't look, I'm not saying he's an idiot. I'm not saying he didn't deserve to be at maybe the top of a list. I'm not saying he's not even the best candidate. Obviously, the optics of it, as Josh Harris said, look pretty bad. The nepotism, the word that you use, gets thrown out there as well. The Sixers' job, this is a team, again, that won 47 games. Would this job be attractive to the top general managers who are out of work right now? In other words, if they did a full-fledged search for the best candidate, is Bryan Colangelo at the top of that list?
That's a very good question. I think Danny Ferry would be my first pick. Again, like I said, there's other things that come with Danny Ferry just because everything that happened in Atlanta. But I think he's probably the best guy in terms of being able to build a core. He doesn't get enough credit for the job that he did in Atlanta, making that team a contender last year and this year. Those pieces that were put together there, bringing Paul Millsap in, keeping all the different pieces together, in keeping Jeff Teague and re-signing Kyle Korver and all the moves that he made there. He doesn't get enough credit for those moves, and the fact that he got them basically out of cap hell. When he got there, Joe Johnson was still there, and they had a lot of issues, but he was able to make very good trades and keep the team's flexibility, keep players in town, and then make key acquisitions as well, and sign players to bargain contracts. So I'm a big Danny Ferry fan. I think that at some point he's going to get another chance as a GM, and I think he'll do a very good job. But you bring up a great question. Do GMs want the Sixers job? It's hard to say. I think there's still a long ways to go. And certainly if I was a GM and I'm talking to the Sixers, I would want long-term assurances that, I'm going to have a long time to correct some of these things that have been done. There's no question they have a great amount of assets. They have young players, a ton of draft picks, and that's always attracted the GMs who want to wheel and deal. They have tons of cap room. But at the end of the day, you look at the roster, and there's a lot of question marks there. So I think GMs that, want to make moves and maybe look at the Sixers as a fixer-upper would have been interested. But, the GMs that, the top guys that are out there that, can be picky and afford to wait to see what job becomes available and maybe wants to contend sooner, those guys may have just ruled out the Sixers entirely because they know it's going to be a long-term rebuild.
I got 30 seconds, Alex. Will Sam Hinkie get another GM job in this league?
Yeah, I think so. I think he will. It may not happen right away. I think that it's going to take some time, and he may have to be an assistant GM again for a while, like he was in Houston. But there are enough people that respect him and his mind that I think it's going to happen at some point. I don't think that another team's going to sign off on doing a 3-year tanking or a 5-year tanking plan. But I think Hinkie will get another shot at some point, and he may approach things differently. I think this is a good learning experience for him.
Alex Kennedy, Basketball Insiders, with Sam Hinkie and the 76ers. The worst team in the NBA continues to be at the top of the topic tree around NBA circles. Alex, always a pleasure, pal.
Thanks a lot. Take care.